A well-regulated militia be necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. We've got a beefy show for you today. Not that it is, lean usually, but we're doubling up on our guest today, Larry Keane from the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Going to be with us here in just a matter of moments. Also, Tim Schmidt from the U.S. Concealed Carry Association a little bit later on in the program. We do have some headlines to get to as well on this Friday, and some good news to report for once. It seems like we haven't had much of that over the past couple of weeks, but the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, Lumumba, we'll get to that story in a second. New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham announcing some revised stay-at-home orders on Thursday, and that means that gun stores are reopening, at least those that closed, because not everyone did. Some stores went ahead and defied the governor's order, but now all gun stores in the state of New Mexico allowed to reopen under appointment only rules for now. We'll see if the gun stores abide by that new policy from the New Mexico governor. This comes several weeks after Governor Grisham declared the gun stores were non-essential businesses, ordered them to close. As I mentioned, not every gun store in the state did so. We spoke with the sheriff in Cibola County, New Mexico, Tony Mace, a couple of weeks ago. He said that stores in his area, a couple of them anyway, had remained open for business. In Grants, New Mexico, there was a pawn shop / FFL that had been open, but again was already operated by appointment only, basically limiting the number of customers inside. And I think this is one of the reasons why Michelle Lujan Grisham backed down, because again, there was such widespread disobedience, not just on the part, by the way, of gun stores in New Mexico, but you had over a dozen mayors across the state that had written Governor Grisham saying, listen, you got to lift these orders. You are killing our economies. Mayor of Farmington, New Mexico, had declared an economic emergency in his city because of the ordered closures. And again, around the country, we're starting to see governors take these steps to reopen. Interestingly enough, Governor Grisham said that the reason why she was amending her order was because that they were flattening the curve in New Mexico. Not exactly, actually. In fact, one of the officials with the state health department said he expects that the number of cases will continue to rise for the next 6 weeks or so in New Mexico. I will be honest with you. I'm still not convinced that Governor Grisham is being honest with the people of New Mexico about her reasons for her actions, including shutting down gun stores to begin with and allowing them to reopen. We have a federal lawsuit that's been filed in New Mexico, and it could be that Governor Grisham simply, again, wanted to avoid a judge telling her that she had overstepped her constitutional bounds. As well as, avoiding the continued headlines of people simply ignoring her stay-at-home order. In Jackson, Mississippi, as I mentioned, the stunt is over. Mayor Lumumba in Jackson not renewing his ban on open carry that he put in place a week ago. That ban expired on Thursday. Earlier in the week, Mayor Lumumba had said that he was going to extend the order. Said that the reason why the order was necessary is because of rising violence on the streets of Jackson. He was smacked down pretty hard by his own city council, who voted unanimously to oppose the mayor's move. Then you had the Attorney General, Lynn Fitch, write a letter to the mayor saying what you're doing violates Mississippi state law and the state constitution. Then you had the U.S. Attorney for Southern Mississippi weigh in, saying basically the same thing, and also pointing out that, look, if Mayor Lumumba wants to get a handle on violent crime, there are a couple of things that he can do, including ensuring that the Jackson Police Department is fully staffed because they are woefully understaffed at the moment. And you can also focus on the violent offenders in Jackson, as opposed to going after legal, law-abiding gun owners. Now, full disclosure, I reached out multiple times to Mayor Lumumba. I wanted to invite him. In fact, I did invite him on several occasions to be a guest right here on Bearing Arms Cam and Company. Obviously, he and I disagree greatly about his decision to try to ban open carry. I believe in violation of the state constitution and Mississippi state law. Unfortunately, never heard back from Mayor Lumumba. So I'm left with the impression that not only was this a political stunt, but that the mayor is a bit of a coward who is willing to address a mostly friendly press and certainly a press that is not going to be nearly as up to date and up to speed on these issues. But when it comes time to actually sitting down with somebody who knows a thing or two about firearms and carry laws and things of that nature, I think Mayor Lumumba simply wasn't ready. So, Mr. Mayor, whenever you are ready, you've got an open invite. It'll be a tough but fair interview, but I promise I don't bite, and would love to have you, even though we haven't heard from you so far. Now, somebody that we did hear from, Larry Keane, Senior Vice President and General Counsel of the National Shooting Sports Foundation, who joined me earlier today to talk about a variety of issues, including a recent letter sent by 19 U.S. senators to the Treasury Secretary, Stephen Mnuchin, Small Business Administration, other administration officials, basically warning them to be on the lookout for shenanigans played by financial institutions when it comes to PPP funds and the firearms industry, because we've seen banks jerk these companies around in years past. And so the concern is that some of these financial institutions might try to play games, deny PPP funds to businesses within the firearms industry. And as the National Shooting Sports Foundation's Larry Keane says, this is not hypothetical. We've seen this type of discrimination before.
Well, we have definitely seen discrimination against companies in the firearms and ammunition industry by banks such as Citibank, Bank of America, and others, which are not justified, in our opinion, particularly after these banks received massive taxpayer-funded bailouts a number of years ago. So we're very pleased to see this letter by 19 senators to the administration, to the Federal Reserve, and to the Small Business Administration, which will be dispensing the funds to businesses under the Payroll Protection Plan to the tune of, several $100 billion with a B. And so the letter says, to the Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve and SBA that, they want to make sure that none of the funds are going to be used by the banks to discriminate against lawful businesses because they are, politically disfavored by some, and that would clearly include, and they give as an example, the firearms industry. But again, it's not just us. The letter is not just about the firearms industry, but we are clearly front and center, and the textbook example of that sort of discrimination, the corporate virtue signaling, where they're making decisions not based on sound business principles or on credit risk, but on, in essence, affecting legislation or policy through lending, and it's not being done, by public policy deciders like Congress and state legislators. So we're very pleased to see the letter by almost 20 senators.
Absolutely. And that letter states in part that, quote, we find it extremely disconcerting that while the vast majority of SBA program lenders do not promote financial discrimination policies, many of the nation's largest institutions currently do. Is this something, Larry, that you've noticed as well, that this is an issue more with the bigger banks as opposed to the smaller, community banks around the country?
We definitely see it with the very large banks. We have seen it sporadically with smaller banks, but certainly it is fortunately fairly prevalent among the large banks.
And what's your advice to businesses that...
Smaller banks, regional banks.
Okay, all right. So it's not just a matter of the big institutions. What is your advice to businesses that do believe that they are being discriminated against, that their PPP funds are not quick in being processed, or, maybe they're just getting the runaround and they feel like it's because they are in the firearms industry?
Well, they should certainly contact their senator and their House member and make them aware of it, as well as if they're in the firearms industry, they should contact the National Shooting Sports Foundation and make us aware of it so we can bring it to the attention of people in the administration, as well as allies in Congress, such as Banking Chairman Senator Crapo from Idaho, who's been a strong leader on this issue, Senator Kramer from North Dakota, who is the sponsor of the Freedom Financing Act,
Mm-hmm.
which is pending in Congress, and Congressman Rogers has a bill in the House that would say that the big banks can't discriminate against the industry. So they would want to know about that. We would want to know about that, so we can, bring it to the attention of policymakers to get at the top.
Okay. And I realize that, it might be tough right now for businesses to actually know what's going on. So many businesses right now are seeing delays. They're having trouble, getting their applications in. So it's kind of difficult to tell. Okay, well, is this just the bureaucracy trying to implement a new program, or is there something more nefarious going on?
Unfortunately, I think, we're seeing some nefarious activity. I think the, what are called ESG, environment, social and governance, groups within these big banks are caving to political pressure from, social justice warriors, from the gun control groups who have been advocating for these policy positions and applauding them when they implement them. So, that's part of the problem. Is this all occurs behind closed doors in boardrooms of large skyscrapers where the banks have their headquarters, and it's not taking place in the open where the public can see what is being introduced, where the public can have an impact on the outcome by saying, I don't support that policy, and I'm not going to vote to reelect this congressman or this senator.
Absolutely. Listen, I want to turn our attention from Congress to the Supreme Court for just a second, if we can. The justices are meeting in conference today, and they are considering, they've listed 10 cases having to do with the Second Amendment. This after the court handed down that decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, basically mooting the case, declaring that the changes to New York City's gun transportation law had declared this case to be no longer valid. I'm curious, first of all, to get your take on the Supreme Court's decision on Monday of this week, and then we'll talk about some of these cases that the justices are considering today.
Well, clearly we're disappointed that the court didn't take the New York City case or ruled that it was moot, because I think Justice Alito's dissent is very well reasoned. But I'm also extremely encouraged by Justice Kavanaugh's concurrence, where he agrees with the concerns expressed by Justice Alito, as well as Justices Gorsuch and Thomas, who joined in the dissent, that the lower courts are not faithfully applying the holding in Heller and McDonald, that they are not applying heightened scrutiny, and that it is time for the Supreme Court to start taking other Second Amendment cases. And so it's very interesting that the day the decision came out, the court scheduled these 10 conferences for today on the numerous cases where cert petitions are pending before the court, including Warman versus Massachusetts, which is a challenge to Massachusetts' ban on modern sporting rifles, as well as Mance versus Barr, which is a challenge to the federal statute that bars the interstate sale of handguns. Why does your constitutional right stop at the state border? In those two cases, NSSF has filed an amicus brief. There are several other cases that deal with right to carry, shall issue, may issue litigation. There's also the Pennant case out of the Ninth Circuit, which challenges California's unsafe handgun bill on various grounds, including the microstamping. And I submitted an affidavit for declaration in that case, cited by the court's decision, speaking about the issue of microstamping and how any slight variation, no matter how small, renders the handgun a new model, and then requires microstamping, which, as you know, is not possible, can't be done. And then so that the gun falls off the roster. And we've seen, I think it's something north of 60% of the guns that were on the California roster have fallen off. It can't be sold to citizens in California, who, by the way, can't go outside of the state to buy handguns. That's the issue in the Mance case. So, there are several cases that raise important issues, but I think what's really important is that I think we are at the dawn of a day of reckoning on the Second Amendment, and that there are more than 4 justices who are prepared to start granting cert in cases. And I suspect that we will see one or more of these cases that are conferenced today being accepted by the court for argument in the next term.
I am cautiously optimistic about that as well, and I would love to see more than one case brought before the court, because, as you say, there are a number of different issues that the court's considering with these 10 cases, whether it's, again, the right to carry. You've got the challenge to New Jersey. You've had 2 different cases out of New Jersey. You've got a case out of Maryland. But then when you get into the ban on modern sporting rifles, and the Pena case out of California, to me, is fascinating, because that is, in essence, a slow motion ban on handguns, which the Supreme Court has, expressly said that you can't ban handguns. You can't ban an entire class of firearms. Well, that's what they're doing piecemeal. I mean, you talk about, it's not just that no new models of handguns have been able to be sold in California since that microstamping law went on the books, but you said 50% of the handguns that were available for sale are no longer allowed to be sold in California. What is that other than a slow walking gun ban?
Well, that's exactly what we argued when the microstamping bill was before the legislature and it was on then Governor Schwarzenegger's desk, that it's impossible to do, as we've demonstrated, and that it is, in effect, a slow motion handgun ban, and that guns would fall off the roster, and guns that are better, safer, more reliable are not available to consumers. And it's pretty ironic that this is supposed to be prevent unsafe handguns when it actually has the opposite effect, and it's more like 60% of the guns falling off the roster. And again, you can't go across state lines as a California resident and purchase a handgun because of the federal law. So it is, in fact, and it's intended to be a slow motion handgun ban.
So, Larry, I'm sorry, let me interrupt for a second.
If you do that.
Yeah. Well, so what is causing these guns to fall off of the roster? Is it, I always give the example of, there's a slight design change. They move the placement of a screw somewhere, and all of a sudden Cal DOJ says, oh, that's a new model of handgun. You can't sell that in the state of California. Is it really, as bad as that? If there's just it doesn't change the function of the firearm. It's just a design modification. That's enough for the state to declare, well, this is a whole new model of handgun, can't be sold in the state?
That's correct. So if you change the dimensions of a part, if you change the composition, like the composition or manufacturing of the part, even if it's to make the part stronger, more durable, more reliable, it is a new model, and therefore new models have to have microstamping, which is impossible to do.
Yeah.
So the slightest modification renders it a new model, and now you have to have microstamping, which you can't do, so the gun falls off the roster.
Unbelievable. Again, I
described this all in the affidavit that we did in the Pena case, which again is discussed by the court in the litigation about how owners. And it's not by accident. This is purposeful. This is intentional.
Yeah.
They want guns to fall off the roster, so that there are fewer and fewer choices. At some point, it ripens into a viable Second Amendment challenge on that basis alone. And, in the NSSF litigation against the state on microstamping, which is separate from the Pena case, where we argued through expert testimony that it is not possible to do microstamping, the state of California had no expert to come forward, not even Todd Lazat, the inventor of this so-called technology, would come forward and say, yes, it can be done. We tried to take Mr. Lazat's deposition in our case, and he ducked the deposition rather than have to testify under oath and admit that his technology doesn't work and can't be done.
And yet the Ninth Circuit still upheld the law. Unbelievable. I wish the justices would take all 10 cases. I don't think that's going to happen, but I am with you again, cautiously optimistic that the court's going to take one or more of these cases. We could know perhaps as early as Monday if the justices agree to hear any cases at conference today. And in the meantime, Larry, as always, sir, I appreciate you coming on the program. One last question for you before we let you go. We are now starting to see some of these stay-at-home orders get relaxed a little bit. New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham is saying gun stores can now reopen as of today, as long as they do it by appointment only. Are you starting to see more signs of progress around the country in terms of retailers being able to reopen? And generally speaking, where do we stand right now in terms of the production of firearms and ammunition in the country?
Well, I was going to say, Governor Grisham pulled a Murphy, a new term I have coined, when a public official, when confronted with litigation, reverses their unlawful and unconstitutional policy. So we saw Murphy do that in New Jersey. We've now seen her do that. And I hope Too Tall Duval in Massachusetts will wake up and realize that his policy is equally unconstitutional and that he will pull a Murphy. We saw the governor of Jackson, or the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi now pull a Murphy and reverse his position when confronted with litigation that his order saying you have no right to carry, even when the Attorney General of Mississippi said that's wrong, he's now reversed his position and has not extended the order. So we are starting to see more progress. As we've seen in Michigan, I think we're on the cusp of seeing that. And now in New Mexico, we've seen local attempts to shut down stores, even though the state executive order allows people to be open. So, for example, we've seen some Bass Pro Shops, like in Springfield, their headquarters is now allowed to open. We know there's an issue going on in Denver with Bass Pro Shops and the city of Denver about whether they can be open or not. The local city health department there tried to shut them down or did shut them down. So we've been working on that. So we're seeing progress as we start to come out of, into sort of phase 2, they say, and opening back up a little bit. We were very pleased that we were able to get stores listed as essential, and the manufacturers are absolutely busy making product and shipping as quickly as they can. The ammunition folks, for sure, they're having record days for production, and we're seeing some challenges in needing supply and getting enough product out there because the demand is so strong. We will, early next week, find out what the next numbers are for April. I predict they will be very strong. Probably will be the highest April in history. That's just a prediction, but we have not. All indications are that sales remain very strong, across the board. So we're looking forward to seeing that. I think it's safe to say that the so-called Trump slump is over. And I think this will continue right on through into the election because we have a very stark contrast between the most pro-Second Amendment president in the history of the United States versus Joe Biden, who wants to ban firearms.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. Larry Keane, General Counsel and Vice President for the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Did I just demote you, Larry?
I'm the Senior Vice President.
Senior Vice President. See, I got to include that. Senior Vice President of the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Listen, it is always good talking with you. I know that it's a topsy-turvy world. Hopefully, I don't know if we're going to get a chance to even talk about going to see a Yankees-Red Sox game in person together, but if nothing else, maybe we can sit on a couch 6 feet away from each other at some point and watch a game at some point this season.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, well, that'll be nice. Hopefully there'll be some baseball around, 4th of July, and even if it's in empty or semi-empty stadiums, it will be good to see. So, but, I'm looking forward, like everybody, to life returning to some semblance of normal in the near future.
Absolutely. Well, listen, in the meantime, again, glad you could join us on the program, sir. Have a good weekend and look forward to talking to you again soon. So, hopefully Monday, we may see some news out of the Supreme Court. Fingers crossed that we will see one or more cases accepted. Don't freak out, though, if we don't. All right? A lot of these cases have been held in conference. They're going to be debating these things. And just because something doesn't get approved or denied, they could kick it around another week. They could, leave this and then revisit this issue. So I am hopeful that we will see the Supreme Court accept at least one of these 10 cases on Monday. But if it doesn't happen, don't think that all of a sudden it means they're not hearing any of them. That's not how this works. Some of these cases have been held in conference for over a year. So I'd like to see some movement, but there's no guarantee that we will see a new case accepted on Monday. If we don't, however, That's not a guarantee that we won't see one of these cases accepted in the next coming weeks. We also had the opportunity today to speak with Tim Schmidt from the U.S. Concealed Carry Association, who has been doing a great job of helping to keep gun owners informed, helping to train new gun owners. We spoke with him about a variety of subjects, including that online training, as well as the possibility of the Supreme Court taking a case dealing with the right to carry. Take a look and a listen. Tim, thank you so much, sir, for coming on the program. It's good talking with you.
Cam, it's my pleasure. It's always good to talk with your folks.
It has been way too long, but I got to say, first off, thank you for what you guys are doing there at USCCA to ensure that the incredible number of new gun owners that we have in this country have access to training. We still have a lot of ranges that are shut down around the nation, and if we have new gun owners, but they don't have the ability to get out to the range, I think it's really important that they at least get the basic knowledge of how to be safe and responsible with their firearms, and you all are doing a fantastic job of doing that.
Cam, thank you very much. It's our mission to create more responsibly armed Americans. And just like you said, I think like 3.7 million background checks were done in March, a record for a long, long time. And when I first heard that, I'm like, that is fantastic. But then I thought to myself, holy cow, I bet you a lot of those people, this could be the first time they've ever held a gun in their hand in their lives. And to your point that you just said, it's so important that they do get training, because a firearm is, it's a tool, and it's a powerful tool, and it can be used for good and for bad. Now, thank goodness, but the majority of the time, good guys use good, guns to stop, bad things. But yeah, you're right. It's so important to get good training.
What have you seen just from your perspective over the past, I guess now, almost 2 months where we've had this national emergency, we've had these stay-at-home orders in place. Are you seeing a surge in interest from gun owners during this time?
So we're seeing surges in numerous areas. First of all, our membership rolls are really spiking. We just April that we just wrapped up here was one of our biggest months for new memberships in over 2 years. Which is great. And I think what's going on here, Cam, is that your typical American is in this situation that we're in right now. They're understanding, or they're coming to the realization that, holy cow, I need to be my family's first line of defense, because we've all heard the news stories about police departments who are overwhelmed and are literally announcing that, hey, look, we're not going to be able to arrest all the criminals. You guys are on your own.
Yeah.
And so many people are coming to the realization that, hey, the guns aren't about target shooting and hunting. No, they're about freedom. They're about protecting their family and safety. And I applaud all these Americans that are going through this process. And that's what we're here for at USCCA, is to help those people do it right so that they can protect their family.
Well, I got to tell you, there certainly has been no shortage of armed citizen stories. I cover them every day on Cam and Company, and lately it's been a matter of, okay, which story am I going to cover? Honestly, Tim, I've been shocked at the number of individuals who, during a stay-at-home order, have decided to break into somebody else's home. Knowing that somebody is likely to be there, you would think if there's any time for a burglar to find a new hobby or another part-time job, this would be the time. And yet every day I'm running across stories where there was just a story I ran the other day of a guy came home back into his house, saw a guy just sitting on his couch, eating ice cream, I think, just where he was not supposed to be. This was one of the many defensive gun uses around the country. No shots were fired. The homeowner just held the burglar at gunpoint until deputies arrived to take him away. But, getting back to your earlier point, this burglar is likely to spend, a couple of hours behind bars before they're returned to the streets, because law enforcement trying to stop the spread of coronavirus, in jails and prisons. And so even if somebody does get arrested right now, odds are they're going to be put right back out and say, okay, we'll come find you in a couple of months when the court system gets back to normal.
Yeah, which of course we know that's not going to happen, Cam. And the fact that you profile these positive self-defense cases is so valuable, because it helps people realize that, 9 times out of 10, when a firearm is used in a situation like that, it's the good guy protecting his family, and it's the good guy, pushing off against the bad guy. And a lot of people don't understand that, because when they watch the general mainstream news, they hear just the opposite. When when the reality is, again, 9 times out of 10, a firearm is used to stop a crime. And so I applaud you for continually reliving those stories. And you mentioned before about how it doesn't make sense for criminals. Well, first of all, we all know criminals aren't very smart people, and they don't think through that stuff. But to the other point, they are being emboldened because they do know that they'll be right back out on the streets. And so now more than ever, it's important for your average American to realize that, hey, you got to be your family's first line of defense, because it's up to you right now. Absolutely.
And going back to the media for a second, you're right. If there is, that's the really sad thing, and the warped perspective that the media, I think, portrays on this issue. When, God forbid, there is a tragedy and lives are lost, the media is all over that story, right? But when lives are saved, and there's no body count to promote, there's nothing, there's no helicopter hovering overhead a scene that you can stream for hours on end. All of a sudden, even though to me that story is just as important, it's completely uninteresting to the media. Well, nobody died, or, okay, yeah, that's great that lives were saved, but, that's not really newsworthy. If it bleeds, it leads is the media mentality. I recognize that from my very first day as a television producer more than 20 years ago. And that attitude is not going to change, which is why it's so important for those of us in this community to do the work that the media won't, and to spread the word about these stories. And one of the things that I've been really interested to see, it seems like you have been doing more media. You've been doing live streams. You've been hosting special events on YouTube over the course of the past couple of months. Have you used this as sort of an opportunity to bypass the media and get your message right out to America's gun owners?
You know what, Cam, that's exactly what we've done. And it's, it's so neat in this day and age, with just our studio right here in our headquarters, we can be up on a satellite or via YouTube and connect with hundreds of thousands of people just like on a moment's notice. And so, yeah, we've had some great connections with Joe Bartozzi, the president and CEO of the NSSF, along with a handful of just really great personalities. And really what we're just trying to do is to get people to understand that concept that, that just going to the gun store and buying a gun that's just the first step. That's not enough. You need to get training. You need to program your mind and your body so that you're not thinking when you have to use that firearm in self-defense. And it's really not that difficult to do. And even in this day and age when there's, all sorts of gun ranges are shut down, there's a lot of great online training. Now, that's not ideal, but it's certainly better than nothing.
Absolutely. All right, I've got to ask you before we let you go here. Supreme Court is meeting in conference today. They're looking at 10 different Second Amendment related cases, including a couple of challenges to carry laws. You've got a couple of cases out of New Jersey. You have one out of Maryland, I believe. We saw the Supreme Court moot the New York City gun case earlier this week, but we also now have 4 justices on the record as saying that the Supreme Court does need to hear a Second Amendment case. They need to hear one soon. How hopeful are you that a right to carry case could be going before the Supreme Court before long?
Well, Cam, I'll tell you what, I've always been a very hopeful person. That's one of the reasons that I'm a Minnesota Vikings football fan. All I've got is hope.
And a brave man for saying that in Wisconsin as well, by the way.
Yes, exactly. I'm already targeted here in Wisconsin. But in all seriousness, I do have hope that the Supreme Court will hear a concealed carry case. And it's great to see how New York City, backed down once they knew that the Supreme Court was going to hear the case about the transportation thing. All I have is hope, and I'm hoping something good will happen because the Supreme Court is relatively pro Second Amendment right now, and that's what we need to happen.
Absolutely. Tim Schmidt again with the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. A real pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the program, and I hope we can get you back on again very soon.
That sounds great, Cam. I really enjoyed it, and thank you for what you're doing. I really appreciate it.
All right, well, why don't we leave you with an armed citizen story today? We'll get back to our good deed in our recidivist report on Monday's Bearing Arms Camp and Company, but today's armed citizen story, this is the scene in Charleston, Illinois, not too far from Champaign, Illinois, where an intruder tried to break into an apartment where he did not belong early Thursday morning, just before 5 a.m. The homeowner fired a shot through the door, actually, as the door was being broken down, striking the intruder. When police arrived, they found a suspect outside of the apartment with a gunshot wound to the chest. He was taken to a local hospital there in Urbana. No word on the extent of his injuries. The investigation does continue, and hopefully we'll have more info for you on an upcoming Bearing Arms Cam and Company. But in the meantime, thank you for being a part of this edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. We certainly do appreciate your support. That goes to all of our VIP and VIP Gold members as well. Looking forward to doing another live chat for our VIP Gold members next week. You can sign up to become a VIP Gold member at BearingArms.com. You can also subscribe to Town Hall Media on YouTube or the Bearing Arms Cam and Company podcast on Apple. That way you never miss a program. And what the heck, since it's Friday, I'll throw in a plug for my non-Second Amendment podcast as well, 40 Acres and a Fool, which I do try to do every week with my wife, Miss E. All things farm-related, non-political. You need something to take your mind off the troubles of the world, check it out this weekend. You can find that at Apple Podcasts or the Blaze Podcast Network. Thank you again for being a part of today's program. Until we talk again, be safe, be well, be free. And we'll see you here soon with another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company.